Travis Wayne Goodsell. So, from the movie Con Air, we learn that you can know the quality of a city by the manner in which they treat their poor. Going out today, dear God, this is far worse than I saw in New York way back in the day. It's sad, but the government is ordered by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to follow the utopian principle, which is a contrary in terms because utopia means paradise. But the principle that is taught in Thomas More's Utopia is about the corruption of government. And if books are too much for you to handle, you can get Drew Barrymore's movie Ever After. She explains it nicely. So yeah, I'm seeing the fallout from the Hollywood shutdown, that's for certain, as well. It's just, corporations are just the dumbest business leaders in the world. They have no clue how to run a company. And when you get these big box companies, they're able to lose millions of dollars in revenue before they realize that they've got a dumbass in the corporate financial office. DVDs can still make a profit selling them for 25 cents a DVD. The advertising with the Amray is the most expensive part, because all you're doing is just transferring files to the disk. That can be done real quick and simple with the right equipment. But nonetheless, the cost of a regular movie is doubled. And so as a result, only the rich can afford to be entertained. It's a sad commentary. So, despite this little tour of Utah this morning, I had a Paul H. Dunn, resurrected from the grave, to ask me a question about Joseph Smith and his translations. Specifically, he wanted to know if the Joseph Smith translation was a translation. And that was from this morning's video. And so, knowing that this was most likely his first time knowing of me, I responded and explained the Joseph Smith translation, as well as the Book of Mormon, the Book of Abraham, and thus by extension the Book of Joseph, and the King Follett Sermon. So first, the Book of Mormon. It is not a translation from Egyptian gold treasure plates. That should be very obvious to anybody who reads it. But nope. You got Mormon apologists who are using fallacy arguments to prove it could be. Dear God. See, that's part of the utopian principle, is miseducation from our youth. Church is well on top of that. And so as a result, Mormons grow up believing the lie And many get offended when they learn a claim of falsehood, but then further lies, not understanding that they just confessed to lying to us. We cannot trust them for anything, even if they claim that what they're now saying is now true. We can't trust them. For example, on my mission, I was with Mark Augustine in Newburgh, New York, and a person came up to us. We were talking with him, golden question, heard about the Mormon Church, Book of Mormon. And he said, didn't Joseph Smith practice polygamy? And Mark Augustine told him, no, Joseph Smith never practiced polygamy. No, we've never practiced polygamy in the church. Partly true, partly not. And back in those days, we didn't have Google search to verify the information and get easy access to the stuff that the church was hiding from us. And so, with the Gospel Topic Essays release, the church came out and said, yeah, we've been lying to you. Joseph Smith was a polygamist. Here are the sealing documents signed by Willard Richards from 1843. Church still lied. They lied and then lied some more to cover up the lie. Did I say William Morgan or Willard Richards? I think I said Willard Richards, didn't I? I got so much information flowing through my brain that the wrong stuff comes out on occasion, as you will hear if you watch my videos regularly. Willard Richards, the one who shot Joseph Smith in the back and then changed the name of the church in all of his documents. Like the Joseph Smith paper, or the Joseph Smith history in the Joseph Smith papers. Joseph Smith papers reveals the truth, and they are the authoritative source. Did Mormons not catch on to this? No. Okay, so how did Joseph Smith do the Book of Mormon? He didn't. That's the great grand secret. They were so effective at not revealing the identity that Mormons still, to this day, have no clue who really wrote the Book of Mormon. There are linguistic scientists who spoke at an ex-Mormon Foundation seminar that have revealed to the world that Sidney Rigdon is the major author of the Book of Mormon. And they couldn't figure out who the author of the rewritten 116 pages were. That was me. Hello. The Joseph Smith paper, so what happens is that with that information, they then conclude hastily that the Book of Mormon is therefore a fraud and they were just trying to make money. Yeah, like being an author, even back then, was big bucks. But nonetheless, no. You're supposed to read the Book of Mormon. You're supposed to do linguistic study of the text of the Book of Mormon too. Not just the linguistic patterns. Because if John Welsh did that, he would go, oh crap, the Book of Mormon has chiasmus. It's not supposed to have chiasmus. Oh crap, what have I uncovered? Instead, the Book of Mormon is true. I've proven it. Chiasmus. Yeah, because when you do something like that, critics are going to go, oh yeah? Chiasmus, you say, huh? And then they're going to find a book taught in the schools back in those days called the Late War. ... And then you're going to get somebody who's tech savvy and who can upload onto a website the comparison between the Late War and the Book of Mormon, and doesn't provide a key for the color coding. Yeah. So again, people are still concluding that the Book of Mormon is a fraud. They're not catching on to what it is. And so it's the exact same as the Bible stories. Did you not catch that? See, the Book of Mormon is composed of different books, and within the books are different stories, just like the Bible. Different books, different stories within the books. That's why there's a whole bunch of plagiarism from the Bible. Or shall we say, plagiarism is proof of its truth. Right, Kwaku? What happened to him? He's gone into hiding, hasn't he? They elevated him to be a Mormon apologist officially. Oh, dear God. And then he got slammed with Brigham Young, the racist. And so the video I did this morning, wasn't it? I showed how in the Book of Mormon there are corrections of translation from the Bible. That's what you're supposed to catch on to. Because the majority of the people had the worst translation of the Bible ever, the King James Version, back in the early 1830s. It wasn't until the mid-1900s when the majority of Christianity also realized the King James Version is crap and then began doing their own versions. You got some, like Jehovah's Witnesses, who from the beginning rewrote the whole Bible to put Jehovah in there for everybody. Jehovah and Delilah. Jehovah and Sarah. Jehovah and Rebecca. Jehovah and Rachel. And Leah. Now, if they understood their Bible correctly, that would be more accurate. They don't. But that also shows you how the Bible was written. And that's what we get to when we get to the Book of Abraham. Joseph Smith knew this too. So, the Joseph Smith translation. It also is not a translation. It's technically a revision, and it's because of Sidney Rigdon, who is the major author of the Book of Mormon, needed to get paid. They didn't have money. They needed to figure out how to pay him. They needed Martin Harris so that he can pay for the publishing of the Book of Mormon. And so when you learn about Sidney Rigdon's history, you learn that he was a Campbellite Baptist from Alexander Campbell's religion. And he wanted to have a revision of the whole Bible so that the Old Testament stories correspond with the New Testament stories. And Alexander Campbell said, no. My church, my religion, my baptism, my scriptures. I only want to redo the New Testament. And so Sidney Rigdon took his Bible and went home. and did his own church out in Ohio. And so, yeah, he wanted to do that, but he wasn't capable to do it on his own because of an accident he had in his younger years, falling off a horse. And thus he was unable to write his own sermons. So that's why he became a bibliophile. Is that the right word? Collector of books, and thus hung out at the Pittsburgh Press and got a hold of the Solomon Spaulding manuscript because the guy died and the press can't do anything with it other than to give it away, if not throw it away. So because he's there all the time, he knew of it and obtained it, because we know he obtained it. It's in the Book of Mormon. Duh. And so what you do see is similar to the Book of Mormon. You see words that are translation corrections from the Bible. And so you see in John 1:42, in the footnote A, you see the Joseph Smith translation for Peter. Upon this rock I will build my church. Yeah, Joseph Smith correctly translates it as seer from Egyptian. So he's showing off his Egyptian knowledge with the Joseph Smith translation, among other things. He also, in the Joseph Smith translation, expands upon some of the stories. This is the practice of the learning of the Jews, fully acceptable. It's a type of midrash, commentary stories explaining the questions left in the Bible text. You know, how did Cain go on to have posterity? His wife is not mentioned. Oh no! Was it Adam and Steve after all? No! But yeah, those were some of the questions that they were dealing with, and that was rejected by the Jews with the Masoretic text of the Bible and the other versions as well, the Septuagint and such, because it's the story of Cain and his wife, and then Adam and Eve having multiple children, which you see Joseph Smith's translation explained for us, that they had multiple children, not just Cain and Abel. Those are simple things. It's just a method for a redactor to explain biblical text and the questions and missing gaps in the story, because they're not literal history. That's all part of the problem. But you'll see that the Joseph Smith translation has a whole long thing about Enoch and Joseph and Moses that is not anywhere. Those are Joseph's method of doing Bible stories, just like the Bible authors did. So they're not literal history. They are the learning of the Jews. That's what you need to be thinking about here. Everything is not Christian interpretation. Not even non-Trinitarian Christianity, as the Church of Jesus Christ claims it is. All of that is wrong, and it's anti-Semitic to claim, because the Jews are the authors. It is the learning of the Jews, not the learning of the Christians. You can't culturally appropriate other people's scriptures and impose your culture and religion upon them. That's Naughty No-No 101. There's like a heroin bomb that went off at the courthouse when I came back to go home. God. So if I all of a sudden break out in rashes all over, you'll know why. Still have the headache. So the Book of Abraham is a translation from the Egyptian of the facsimiles, not the text. And that has eluded Egyptologists to this day, because they do not know. They're PhDs in Egyptology, and they don't know. And instead of saying, I don't know, they instead say, no, Joseph is wrong. Dumbasses. No, that's exactly how the Bible was written. Alexandria was the great library. And scholars and scribes from all over the world would go there, if they could. Otherwise, the Alexandrian library sent people out to copy and bring back to their library the documents from all over the world. And then Christians got a hold of it and burned it. Christians have always been burners. What's up with that? You know, can't use psychology because they're also pseudoscience. But they claim that a person who's so obsessed with fire is a bedwetter. Are Christians bedwetters? Is that why you burn crosses? Is that why you're going to cause Armageddon and the day that shall burn as an oven? The abomination of desolation? Is that why? Because you're a bedwetter? Are Islamic terrorists bedwetters? Is that why they cause so much fires? What's up with that? Don't blame me, it's psychologists, and I told you there's pseudoscience. So blame them. And so the method that Joseph Smith did it, you can see in the text. Because he says, I refer to you to the facsimile in the papyri. So yes, facsimile number 1 is Abraham, chapter 1. And then chapter 2 comes from the Bible. Chapter 3, add to the rest, which includes a redoing of the Genesis creation story account, comes from the Hypocephalus, facsimile number 2. And then facsimile number 3, Joseph never got to. And that's the marriage of Isaac. Who do you think it was? Abraham sitting on the throne. There's a man and a woman holding hands. What did you think it was? But Joseph said that the female Isis behind him is, well, no, it's Hathor. Wrong crown. Hathor is the mother of Horus. And so it's Horus with Ma'at, his wife. So yes, it's a form of the judgment scene that is common all over Egypt. But it's designed as the wedding ceremony. Egyptologists couldn't figure it out. Too complicated for them, I guess. You had roads. They only do text. They have no clue how to translate the larger size hieroglyphs. They're not listed in any Egyptologist sign list. Not gardeners, not budges, nobody. They don't know how to translate it. They don't know it needs to be translated. It does. And there's volumes of books of translation to be had because Egyptologists have claimed that they've got it all. They know it all now. Everything's, all set. Nothing more to see. Dumb. So, Joseph Smith, brilliant in catching on to this, recognizing that the Bible stories come from the Egyptian documents too. And so, yes, I've published all about this. You can, academia.edu has one of those publications. I can't remember the title, but it's where I go over each of the Genesis stories to Noah, showing you where they're found in the Egyptian documents. So when I told you that the Book of Mormon had been found by me to have been in the Egyptian documents, it's Egyptian gold plates. It's got to be in the Egyptian documents somewhere. I found it. Oops. Neum. 1 Nephi chapter 19, verse 10. And so he's referring to the brass plates, as they claim. But talking about Moses, led out of Egypt, out of bondage, preserved in the wilderness by him, the God of Abraham and of Isaac and of Jacob, yielding himself according to the words of the angel, as a man into the hands of wicked men to be lifted up. You didn't catch that? As a man, not a god, as a man. That's the learning of the Jews, Christ. To be lifted up, according to the words of Enoch, in the Egyptian documents, and to be crucified, according to the words of Neum, in the Egyptian documents, and to be buried in a sepulchre, according to the words of Zenos, in the Egyptian documents, which he spake concerning 3 days of darkness, that should be given as a sign given of his death unto those who shall inhabit it, the isles of the sea, and more especially given unto those who are of Utah, in the Egyptian documents. Well, did I say Utah? Yes. It's all in the Egyptian documents, guys. And not a single Egyptologist knows any of it. Just me. Because I wanted to know how Joseph Smith rendered his translations. And so, yes, the Book of Joseph, the other papyrus set, it didn't get finished either. And tell me. It's real simple once you know how it's done. And so even though facsimile number 3 shows Abraham when it's Osiris, and it's Isis, his wife, behind him, even though she's wearing the crown of Horus, which means the crown of Hathor, which means Horus is the one holding the hand of the woman for their marriage ceremony. That's just one level of translation. Joseph Smith never did that level of translation. He did his translation as the biblical authors did for theirs. And so, you can likewise find the Egyptian documents using that pattern that Joseph Smith gave you. So, Abraham calling his wife, Sarai, his sister, so that she wouldn't be kidnapped by Pharaoh, and then does anyway. And then, for some miraculous reason, she gets pregnant. As the messengers later tell her, hey, you're pregnant. Abraham couldn't do it, but having been kidnapped by Pharaoh, now you're pregnant. And you need to know the Egyptian story behind that, because it's in the Egyptian documents. So, and thus you would actually see that in the facsimile number 3, because Pharaoh is the female standing behind Abraham, sitting on the throne of Osiris. Ta-da! Because that is her story of becoming Pharaoh until her son was old enough to take the throne. David Moses the third. And then the King Follett discourse is the final one here. It is a correct translation of pre-Babylonian captivity Jewish Egyptian Israelite. Sounds complicated, but the Book of Mormon starts us off with Lehi, who is from the northern tribes, now living in Jerusalem, right before the Babylonian captivity. And so you need to know the history of Jerusalem and Judah. It was not an independent nation. It was a tributary nation with a tributary king to Egypt. See, Assyria would come in and conquer the northern tribes from Egypt. Then Babylon came, took over Assyria's domain, and then took over the final piece of Canaan with Judah. Because the Egyptians were falling fast. And it still took some time, because it wasn't until Alexander the Great and that whole Cleopatra incident where the two countries merged into one. And then you get the Ptolemaic period right before you get the Roman period. So Egypt lasted a long time, but that whole Canaanite strip was a source of much power struggle to see who was going to have it be rendered unto their authority and give tribute to them instead. And so, knowing that, not a single Hebraist, scholar, anybody knows the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet until I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. And yes, I have all of it available for you on academia.edu. And with my videos also, there's some material that I did not put in that publication, which has to do with the latter days. The alphabet itself was designed to teach and prophesy of the latter days. The signs in the heavens casting a shadow on the earth, the solar eclipses casting a shadow on the earth. So a solar eclipse not only gives you the day and the hour of his coming, but also the casting of the shadow on earth. So it gives you a location of his coming and the day and the hour. You catching on to this? Matthew is wrong, or the redactor of the author claiming to be Matthew is wrong. We do know the day and the hour, and it's all over Matthew. And I just read it from the Book of Mormon for you. We know 3 days of darkness. Ta-da! And so the letter A in Paleo-Hebrew is shaped exactly, even put on its slant, exactly as the signs in the heavens for the latter days, the 3 days of darkness. And so when you read about the Exodus and the 3 days of darkness, when you read in the Book of Mormon, 3 days of darkness, when you read from the Gospels, 3 days and 3 hours of darkness, yeah, it all means the same thing. It's the solar eclipses of the latter days, the time frame of Passover, wrongly called Passion Week. And so it's 7 years, 8 years technically, but rather than 8 days. You got to learn the manner of prophesying among the Jews. And so the King Follett sermon goes over the biblical Hebrew text of Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, at least half of it. Very frustrating to have only that to work with. But there was sufficient enough, and I had the foremost scholar taught under Thomas O. Lambden to give me the clues necessary, for which I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew within 6 months. And so, when you understand that that's what Joseph Smith was also doing, you then know that the head God he's referring to is Yah. It's right there in Genesis 1, correctly translated, according to Paleo-Hebrew, not Biblical Hebrew. Because Biblical Hebrew was a naughty no-no of the Masoretic Jews. They changed the shape of the script from Paleo-Hebrew into Aramaic. And then they added in some letters similar to what the Greeks did to be vowels. And then they went a step beyond to make sure that they trampled all over the law in Deuteronomy, not to touch the text. And put in vowel points. And so by doing that, they fixed the translation to one and only one English translation. And the Jewish Publication Society has the exclusive translation of it. And they don't want anybody to have it. It's not available online to copy and paste. Very frustrating. And so you have to buy their books. Angry Dog. We got 13 days left, guys. Hurry up with that app. I want it before Armageddon. But the master is having a real hard time training that dog, aren't they? They desperately need that app. And so there's a whole lot more in there. And it ties into what was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls about the sons of light and the sons of darkness. Genesis chapter 1. There it is. And so, yeah, you see it as Lillah, Adam's first wife. But I did that video last week, 2 weeks ago, something like that. But, well, that's how he did it. And so, yeah, obviously he never got to finish. He was trying to fulfill the prophecy of Ezekiel 37 to allow the Bible to be rewritten so that all of the corrections get made and all of the extra Egyptian stories of prophecy can be added with it, so that they can be combined together into one. That's why he named the other papyri the Book of Joseph, the Stick of Ephraim, so that he can then make the connection. So you guys had to wait for 200 years until I came along to do it. But we got to get me to Missouri, don't you? Or not Missouri. Dear God, I can't believe I made that mistake. Southern Illinois. Got to get the hell out of Utah. 13 days. Who's giving me a ride? Don't all speak at once. Nobody's even listening.